Are you wanting to improve coverage on your sprinkler system by switching to Hunter MP Rotator nozzles? Watch this to learn how. This is the project we'll use to explain the subject of this video. This Google Street View photo from 2008 is pretty awful, but that's the way they were back then. I didn't get very many before photos, so I went to Google Street View and grabbed these photos to show the transformation over 15 years. In the first photo from 2008, you can see the tree that used to be in the middle of the lawn with the edging around it. This matters because we'll see what happened to the lawn when that was removed within a few years. You can see the tall Italian cypress trees at the corner of the house with the Hollywood twisted juniper in front of them. These were all removed before I started this job, but their mark was left since they were only cut down at the soil level and the roots became an issue when I was digging a trench in front of them. There's a yucca to the right of them, but that wasn't an issue with my work. It got cut down at the base as well. In this May 2023 photo, you can see the corner conifers are gone and the yucca is making a comeback. Now you can see what happened when they removed the square planter in the middle of the lawn. Because it had organic matter in it like planting mix and bark, it's greener than the rest of the lawn and will be for a long time. It will probably produce mushrooms a couple of times a year as well. The main things we actually want to take note of for this video are the coverage issues in the lawn. No, it's not from bad soil or home construction materials buried under the lawn area or grubs or any kind of critters like gophers. It's all about the location and performance of the current sprinkler system, and I'll break that down for you, and in the end, you'll see the difference after it's been solved by yours truly. The original pop-up layout was like this. You can see the coverage issues here. The heads are too far apart and they're not spraying far enough. There aren't any heads in these corners, and there's nothing along this side. A proper design starts with heads in every corner. The heads aren't equally spaced, and the sprays all need to be reaching each other. It's what we call head-to-head coverage, and it's absolutely critical when using rotary nozzles in lawns, as I talk about in this video. Funny side note is that the real example I use in that video is just 3 houses down from this house. On my drawing, the X's are the original locations. The X's with the circles around them are the original locations and I don't need to move them. I'm just going to replace them so we can retrofit with the Hunter MP Rotator nozzles and have the proper pop-ups installed as well. The circles without the X's are new locations, and the arrows pointing from the old locations to the new location, and that is where I'll need to trench to lay the new pipe. You can see I wrote the distance between the heads. The curves in the lawn create some challenges, but we just get as close as we can. The place we have the most cushion is along the beds since overspray isn't an issue like it is on the concrete, so your design needs to reflect that. Water conservation isn't the only reason to consider rotary nozzles for your property, and this property is one of those special cases. But before you make the switch to rotary nozzles, be sure you watch this video called The Best Rotary Nozzles. The most important part you want to watch is about how rotaries are not my first pick for lawn nozzles, and I explain why. So, the reason I chose rotary nozzles for this project is that they wanted to improve the awful coverage, yet there was only one sprinkler valve for this lawn, yet there was already too many heads on the line for what it could handle. They wanted to keep the expense to a minimum, so adding a couple of valves and splitting the line wasn't an option. Since MP rotators use about a third the amount of water per minute than the existing nozzles, I did the math using my new design and verified that one valve could easily handle the added heads using MP rotators. To learn how to do the math on this, watch this video about coverage. In this case, with the 3/4 inch valve that can only handle up to 8 gallons per minute, the math shows us that these MPs in total only need 6 gallons per minute for 12 pop-ups versus standard nozzles which would have required more than 17 gallons per minute. The reason this pop-up is sticking up so high is because of the shallow horizontal pipe under it. When these homes were built in the 70s, the irrigation systems were installed using these brass pop-ups, which were short. So it was common to install the piping shallow and just use a short riser into the pop-up. But this doesn't work well with our modern plastic pop-ups that pop up 4 inches and have bodies almost 6 inches deep. So in some cases, we can use shorter pop-ups if the lawn gets cut short like this one does. Or we use a swing arm assembly and lower the pop-up alongside the pipe. One of the drawbacks to this is that the new pop-up is further away from the lawn edge, which can make coverage along the lawn edge a bit of a challenge sometimes. I take this issue one at a time, head by head, and decide the best remedy based on each location's challenges or positives. So we've got some more flexibility here. We got some length to work with. So let's see if we can put the standard 4-inch pop-up in here. We'll put this down right at that fitting, and it does put it up just barely above the height of the concrete. Let's try the 3-inch. Yeah, that's more like it. That puts it right even with that concrete there. This is a 1000 series nozzle, which I'm going to be using throughout this yard because I've got basically 11 to 11.5 foot spacing between everything. Out in the middle, it's actually less than that. It's between 9 and 10 feet. Since I'm using this 30 psi, that's going to be reducing the ability for this to throw as far. So we'll see how it functions, but I may have to switch that to a 2000 series. I'm marking the flat side. You see how that's flat right there? That shows the stationary side of the nozzle, and that needs to be on the left if you're standing behind the pop-up. So I mark that with my silver Milwaukee ink saw. I call them Milwaukee Sharpies. Folks, I just got a rude awakening. MP Rotators with the screens don't work in these 3-inch pop-ups with the pressure regulators built in because there's not enough depth in there. The pressure regulator's down there, the screen's hitting it. So I'm going to have to use a Hunter 3-inch that does not have a pressure regulator built in. Some of you might be thinking, how come I didn't know that already? I have never been in this situation before. I have never used one of these pop-ups, these 3-inch pressure regulated pop-ups with a MP Rotator nozzle before. Like that. Other than sweeping when the first one's in. Even with a 2-inch pop-up, it still sticks way up above the concrete. I'm going to have to cut this out and redo that piping like I was talking about. At that point, then I can go ahead and use a 4-inch. So one reason this one here is so shallow is because this pipe here is under it. Still no excuse, that should have been put deeper, especially since it's going under the concrete. It's going under the driveway. There used to be a lawn over there, but it's now concrete, so we don't even need this anymore. I can cut this back here and get it out of my way.
So I put the elbow on first, and then figured out, I put this assembly together, screwed this assembly together, figured out where it needed to be in here, and then I was able to create the length for that short pipe. So then I put that all together, and then I was able to get the distance here and here. And the last thing I glued on was this, so I could bend that back, because this is the part where I had the most flexibility right here, and I had some flexibility here because I dug out right here. So I was able to push that pipe that way a little bit, and this I was able to push back like that and then push it on. Sometimes when I'm doing these retrofits, moving and adding heads, and I'm using this funny pipe, sometimes I'll just put my cutter and my pliers in my back pockets, and I don't even need the tote. But in this situation here with this shallow pipe, I don't know what I'm going to be running into, so I may need some cut-off extensions or whatever. I'm not sure what I'm going to need, so I'd rather have the tote with me. And if I have just my pliers and cutters in my back pockets and I'm not carrying the tote around, then I take this with me too, and I just hook it on my pocket so that I have my markers, my pull-up tools, and the little screwdriver, etc. Okay, take the sprinkler out, put the threaded tee in there, get the funny pipe on there, and make sure I've left this out where it can get plenty of sun and collect heat on concrete. Makes it nice and soft to work with. Pushes onto the fittings easier. Then I put my assembly together. I've taken and thrown all these out. So I've thrown the head, the nozzle, and the Marlex, or the fittings, out at each place beforehand. And then when I get here, I put this together, Marlex first, and then the fitting, the elbow. And then that way I know where it needs to sit in here, where my flag is. And I'll put the funny pipe down, and I'll figure out exactly where I need to cut it. Once I have this assembly on the funny pipe, then I pull the shaft up so that I can get that silver mark that I've put on there, so that I can get it on the left side like that. I'll still have to make adjustments when I'm all done, but that gets it close anyway. Now to the other side. When you are digging out around your PVC fitting, if you're going to use a T, you got to make sure you have enough dug out so that can spin without hitting dirt, because you don't want dirt getting down inside of the T. If you find that you haven't dug out quite well enough for the T to spin here without hitting the dirt, I always carry something like this in my tote so that I can spin that on there and keep the dirt out while I dig around it. Now I've got plenty of room for this to spin on. When you're only going one way with the funny pipe, then you just use one of these elbows. When I'm putting the dirt back in, around the head. I put my thumb over the top of the nozzle to keep the dirt out of that part there. And while I'm down on my knees, after I get this installed, I set the head, is what we call it, setting the head. And that's getting dirt tucked in around it so that it's at the right angle, the right height. And then I can come back later with a shovel and backfill. In this corner here of the driveway is where I'm going to use this 2-inch pop-up. Got kind of a long, close nipple here that I'm going to use. And that'll put it right about where it needs to be. And they keep this lawn really short, so I don't think this is going to be a problem with it only being a 2-inch pop-up. So yeah, it puts it right there, even with the concrete. There is some dirt down in the T. It's not a whole lot, but I'm not going to put the nozzle on right now because when I turn the water on to get things adjusted, I'm pointing this out towards the driveway, and it'll flush the dirt out when I turn the water on. Okay, all the heads are installed, and I just got to backfill everything now. It's all backfilled. Now I just got to turn it on, get everything adjusted, blow the dirt out of that. Okay, I've gone around and made the adjustments, and as I mentioned earlier, all the perimeter nozzles are the 1000 series. That 360 and the far 360 are also 1000 series. The one in the middle, because it's only a 9 feet across and 9 feet this way in each direction, that's an 800 series, and it's just right. These are all on the PRS 40 pop-ups, except for that 2-inch and this 3-inch and that 3-inch over there. You never know what your performance is going to be exactly, so you've got to have a plan B ready. In this case, this, even though I've adjusted the little screw in the middle, I've adjusted it out as far as it'll go, it's barely reaching that. And it's barely reaching that over there, and vice versa. So I've got to change the nozzles out on that one in the corner, and that one and that one. I'm going to change them to the 2000 series. To make it easier, I'm using my Rainbird pull-up tool. I've got that one and that one held up, and I'll change out those two nozzles, and then I'll put pull-up tools. I'll turn the water back on and put the pull-up tool on the next two, that one and that one. Fortunately, I have my Roam XL remote connected to the timer, so all I have to do is stop. The change I made on these from the 1000 series to the 2000 series made all the difference. And we had room on this line to do that, so it's not going to be an issue. There's still plenty of pressure on here. See, these easily reach each other now. Looks great. Everything's evenly spaced.
went from this to this. A beautiful, evenly green lawn in a matter of weeks. Here's a funny story. When I drove up to this place, I thought, boy, this place sure looks familiar. I had installed this timer 10 years ago to the month for the previous owner. Remember the free downloads that can help you with your irrigation, and also remember the resources site linked below that has most of the products for sale that I've discussed in this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.